Let's do it.
Hello everyone and welcome in this new Twitch stream running Umbraco on Azure. Um, we're going to do some live coding today. I'm going to do that together with Callum. Hi
Hello.
Callum, how are you?
I'm good, Henk. How are you doing?
Where are you joining me from?
I am joining you from London.
From London. Cool. It was like a very special Umbraco day, right?
It was. So today would have been the annual Umbraco conference in Denmark. Unfortunately, with the current global situation, that's not happening. So everyone has been celebrating on Twitter. Some of the Umbraco MVPs were announced today, as well as some awards for fantastic projects people have made over the past year. So the community spirit's still very much there.
Yeah, I saw a lot of pictures coming by. And in the morning there were the Umbraco Awards, which luckily I got one again. I guess you got also one again?
I did, thank you.
And like 49 other people.
Yeah, there was a decent amount of people on the renewals list for the MVPs, and 14 new faces as well, which is awesome.
That is really cool. And it was most valuable person, right?
Most valuable people is what MVP
People.
stands for in the Umbraco world, because as the chief unicorn, the head of the project, as we call him, Niels Hartvig said this morning, uh, professional most valuable professional just seems a bit unhuman, and it's nice to actually treat people as people.
Yes, I can totally agree with that. But you're saying a chief unicorn? I think we need some explanation about
Yeah.
for that.
So there's this ongoing thing of Umbraco and the Umbraco employees being unicorns and them being kind of magical and friendly and everything. So yes, Niels, the founder of Umbraco, calls himself the chief unicorn.
Cool. And he occasionally dresses up like a unicorn, or
There's been unicorn hats and gloves and all kinds of things. I've never seen a full unicorn costume though.
okay, so that sounds something like for next
The
next
next
Code
time.
Garden or
Yeah,
next Ugh.
exactly.
So, but that brings us to what is Umbraco? What are we going to talk about? So, can you say it like in 2 sentences what Umbraco is?
Yeah, sure. So Umbraco is a friendly, open source ASP.NET framework based web CMS. It helps you get up and running really quickly and easily with building a website.
Cool. So, first of all, I hear you saying it is open source. So that means I should be able to find the source on GitHub.
Yeah, absolutely. So github.com/Umbraco will get you to the all of the open source projects that Umbraco runs. They have not only the CMS but a bunch of other libraries that go with it. And the community really does embrace the open source ethos too. So there's open source plugins and extensions that are also found on GitHub.
Cool. And why is it friendly? It's a CMS.
Of course. So this is a really interesting thing. Umbraco is friendly in a couple of ways. It's friendly from the community perspective because everyone in the Umbraco community really does embrace this kind of friendly, sharing, open source ethos. But on the other side, it's friendly as a product to use. It's designed to be really nice for developers, but also fantastic for editors. So it's a truly pleasant experience for someone as a user to actually enjoy.
Cool. That sounds perfect. So I'm really curious to see this new version. I've been working with older versions of Umbraco. I've been running like some conferences in the Netherlands for Umbraco, but I haven't had the chance of playing like that much with the latest version. So I'm curious for the people who are actually watching, who is already working with Umbraco at the moment. So if you are, please throw it in the chat and tell me what you are building. So we might even have a look at it.
I can see some familiar names in there already. It's great to see the Umbraco communities joining in already here.
Oh yeah, yes, I see Arnold already.
And Matthew Wise, who was named as an Umbraco MVP today too.
Oh wow, congratulations. That is pretty cool. So throw it in the chat if you have done anything with it, and we would love to hear your stories. But we are going to do some live coding today, and we're going to see if we can get Umbraco actually in the cloud. So
Yeah.
let me start sharing our screen. So what we see now is the umbraco.com website. And there we can probably find more information about what Umbraco is, some case studies, some apps, an Umbraco tour actually, Umbraco agencies, partner benefits, the products that there are. And there are some great learn resources. So there is Umbraco TV, there is a blog, there is lots of documentation, and there is a place for the community. So we will be using the documentation, of course, to build something, because I will probably have to copy and paste some code. So, but let's start. Or do you have anything to share before we dive into the code?
No. I guess the only thing is everyone wish us luck. Henk, you were saying that your demos have not, or your demos you've been making today have not gone well so far. So we're pushing fate here, but I'm sure we can get through it.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting day of things that didn't work. So let's hope Umbraco is friendly to me today.
Yes, I'm sure it will.
Let's have a start. We start with creating a Git repository. Let's do that in GitHub. Let's call it Umbraco 8 on Switch. We'll make it private, and yeah, we put in a README file, and let's add already a git ignore file.
Of course, this Git repo could live anywhere. We're using GitHub just because it's our preferred tool of choice.
Yes. So let's copy the URL and clone this repository. It is very difficult to clone an empty repository. Probably because I didn't log into my GitHub.
Yeah, you're going to have a cycle of 2FA and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, it is on my other screen actually. So luckily I have my mobile phone here, so I can get like my two-factor. You can never be like too secure.
Of course.
And there it is. Nobody will see my two-factor because this is a different screen. 1, 2, 4. Okay. Cool, and it is
progress.
Cloned. So, as I remember, I have to create a new project.
Yes.
And ASP.NET.
Now, because the project actually runs on .NET Framework, you do have to choose an ASP.NET Framework project here.
Yes,
there is an
effort right?
Yeah, there's an effort ongoing to make it work on .NET Core, but for now, with Umbraco 8, the version we're demonstrating, you have to use .NET Framework.
Yes. So let's call this project Umbraco Switch. Let's put it in the repository we've just cloned. It's in my playground. Umbraco on Twitch. .NET Framework 7.4.7.2 good?
So the minimum required version for Umbraco 8 is .NET Framework 4.7.2, but it will work on .NET 4.8 as well.
Which I still have to install. You can see how much I'm doing this thing. Empty.
Of course. Umbraco will install all the stuff it needs in order to get up and running.
Cool. So let's create this one. Cool, we have an empty project. So next we will do manage NuGet packages, and this would be cool if it just works. We will use Umbraco. So I see a lot of...
Of course. You're probably, when you search Umbraco and NuGet, going to find not only the official CMS, but maybe some of these open source plugins I mentioned as well. And Umbraco has a couple of different libraries, so you could choose to use it as a website or maybe in a console app. But the one we want to install today is Umbraco CMS on NuGet.
Cool. Let's click install, and this will probably take a while, I guess.
Yeah, there's a relatively large tree of dependencies that it's going to pull down here. Umbraco itself ships with almost everything you'd need to get up and running as a CMS, but kind of pretty bare bones. So baked in, it's got some really nice open source libraries that it uses, such as the image processor library from Microsoft MVP James South. It has a whole search system baked in, which is Lucene based, Lucene.net, and it uses the Examine.net library built by another Microsoft MVP, Shannon Deminick, to get all of that up and running as well. So Umbraco will pull all of that stuff.
I see it here.
Yes. There's all kinds of other goodness in there.
Of course, we accept
structured logging with there's all kinds of stuff.
Cool. So what is the plan for this hour? We actually wrote it down so that we had a plan.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about what Umbraco is. If you still have questions about what Umbraco actually is, then please throw them in the chat. We're now going to install Umbraco and then create an Azure Devops pipeline to deploy it in a normal way to the cloud. Deploy it to Azure indeed. And then we're going to see how we can cache images in blob storage, because of course with every website images is a big thing. And then if we still have time, we're going to create our first page in Umbraco.
Yeah.
That should be doable in 45 minutes, I guess.
Definitely.
Cool. So let's do that. Is it done? Cool.
Yeah, it's installed. You see this fancy ASCII Umbraco logo there?
Oh, yeah.
And
that's pretty cool. Let's zoom in a little bit.
Umbraco is installed.
Awesome. So let's see if this actually works. It's fine. It's opening a browser, it is doing something.
So on first launch of an Umbraco instance, it will make you run through an installer. And what this is going to do is it's going to bootstrap the database that you need in order to run the site. In this case, it will ask you to provide your details, name, username, and a password.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. It shows your password, right?
It does. It shows your password. I guess this is maybe
like, okay, that was scary.
So at least for the purpose of this demo, let's choose a password that you don't mind the world seeing.
Yeah, not a password I actually just showed.
So I guess it's a plain text field. That will do. Awesome. And then we can click customize, and this would let us decide what we want how we want our CMS geared up. If you're doing anything with membership or with users and sharing that database across multiple machines, you'll want to choose a machine key, but otherwise you don't. As today we're setting it up on Azure, you can choose an Azure database too. So you've chosen Microsoft Azure SQL.
Yes. So that will be the first thing we need to set up.
Yeah.
Let's create some resources then. Azure SQL. Single database will be good for now. Let's create a new resource group, Umbraco Twitch resource group, and we will call the database Umbraco on a new server. Yeah, that probably is not good enough. Let's generate a safe password. Yeah, that's better. And we probably want to have it a little bit close in
Something
West
close by, yeah.
Europe. And it can't be.
Ooh.
It can't be admin.
Now, so it'll ask you to choose what size database you want. For production workloads, Umbraco recommends that you need a minimum of an S2 Azure SQL database. That ensures you've got the right amount of power to get up and running. So that would be, yeah.
So we have basic, standard.
I think an S2 is with 20 or 50 DTUs. 50 DTUs.
That is quite expensive.
It can be quite expensive. That said, you can run it on a smaller instance, and it does work fine. It will just affect the startup times. The startup times might take a little bit longer, or you might get some timeouts. You can adjust that in the config, but an S2 is the recommended.
Oh yeah, and now it says S2, right? Yeah, that's good. We don't want to have any additional networking. This is all fine. We don't need to add tags, and we can create one.
Awesome. I guess once this is provisioned as well, you'll make sure it's locked down so only your IP address can access it.
Yes.
Amazing.
Actually, I think by default it is closed, and I will have to open it from my IP.
That is true.
Yes.
It allows it to all of Azure, but not to not public access.
Okay, that's taking its time. So then we have a database, so that's good. And we have to enter those details.
Directly into the installer.
Oh yeah, in the installer here. We can already fill this one in. The login was Umbraco, and the password was something super secret. So we just have to wait until this is created.
Cool, the server's created, but the database is doing it now.
So that should be going fairly quick.
The database hostname should be umbracotwitch.database.azure.net.
Yes. Cool, it is here. So we need to set our firewall. Ooh, fancy new interface. Deny public network access. Yes. Then we can add our client IP, and then it should be secure enough.
Do you need to specify allow Azure services as well?
Yeah, that was an old. Oh, here it is. Allow server. Yes, that's all pretty easy when we finally deploy it to a web app.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have set deny public network access to yes. Set to yes, allow connections. Oh, and disables any existing firewall. Okay. This probably has to go off then. Setting to yes allows connections via appropriate private endpoints only and disables any existing firewall rules.
Yes, yeah, that probably does need to be off. That's a new setting, right?
It's absolutely a new setting. Cool. We can add it to virtual networks. Okay. Perfect. So we have to find our database. So our connection strings. We just need the server, right?
Yeah, just the server.
Yes. Yes, it is in this window. Yes. So this is it what we need, right?
Yep.
Database name, username, password. Continue.
So here it'll ask you if you want to install a demo site, basically, to get up and running quickly. In this case, we're building something from scratch, so we don't need to.
Cool. So we will get like a plain Umbraco now.
Completely empty. So one of the beauties of Umbraco is it comes with nothing. It's a complete blank canvas that you can build whatever you want with. So it's up to you to define your structure, the types of pages or the types of documents that you want, and yeah, kind of everything. It's fully customizable.
Cool. So I'm still looking for developers who have actually been working with Umbraco. So if you have done anything with Umbraco, please share your project in the chat or just say hi.
Cool. So we have our CMS up and running now. You've been presented with a tour, which gives you an option to, it will guide you through creating your first page and all of that sort of stuff. But I'm going to be your guide for today, Henk.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Great. So we effectively have the CMS up and running. We have a content section, a media section where you can store things like images, and all of the settings and all the config is under these other sections here.
Cool, and I'm curious what it just does now. It just says open Umbraco.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any content.
We've not
CMS,
any.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
Then I think we succeeded in setting up a developer's environment.
Yeah, I'd say that was pretty easy.
That was indeed pretty easy. So let me stop this and commit everything to the I'm a sidecore developer, yes. You should try Umbraco. It's pretty nice.
It's good.
Let's check this in my GitHub repository and start building a DevOps pipeline that can deploy this to an Azure web app.
Yeah.
Right? Or did we forget anything? Installing, proceed with the installer, commit and push changes, indeed. So let me do that quickly. I'm not like a console type of person, so I'm always using Git Kraken to push everything for me.
Yeah, I wish I was competent enough with Git that I could just bash out any Git command to do anything I wanted.
Okay, so but this shows us directly a problem here in Git Kraken. I have to commit like 1894 files.
Sure. So that's because your app data temp folder is included in the repository. The temp folder includes some of the internal files that Umbraco generates, such as Lucene.NET indexes that get stored on disk. So the safest thing would be to ignore that temp folder from your git ignore file.
Yeah, can I see that from here? Of course not. Do we ever git ignore? Yes. Of course, notepad. Okay.
And something else that I usually recommend is excluding the Umbraco folder as well. Umbraco, to install it via NuGet, adds all of the CMS to that folder. You don't want that included, obviously. So
we have to ignore this directory. And
yep. And /Umbraco as well.
In the old version, there was like Umbraco and Umbraco client.
Yeah, it's been unified in Umbraco 8, so it's just one single folder that you have to exclude. It's
that's pretty nice. Let's see if I've done that right in the git ignore file. Probably not, as always. Probably not. It is Umbraco Twitch, Umbraco Twitch.
Instead, perhaps we could just exclude, instead of the full path, just exclude the name Umbraco and app data.
This is how much I do this.
57 files changed. I think we can live with that.
Yes, let's hope it is not including any Umbraco goodiness things.
It doesn't look like it is. So here we should just have our configuration and our the stuff that ships with Umbraco out of the box. Everything else will be automatically applied when our build server does a NuGet restore and pulls those files down.
We're only checking in some config files.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Okay. So let's do that. First commit. And push it. And cool, we're still live, so that's awesome. Okay, then let's go to dev.azure.com. Sign into Azure Devops. And I didn't prepare this at all. So we'll have to set this up from scratch. So let's start a new project. That is fine here. Let's make the private project Umbraco on Twitch.
So this is going to create the project with everything in it, boards, repos, but we're today just going to focus on pipelines, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
And we're especially going to just create a build pipeline,
A build.
I guess.
So yeah, we can connect to GitHub straight from Azure DevOps, and hopefully you should just be able to select that GitHub repo we created a few moments ago. Umbraco 8 on Twitch, awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's even there. I probably have to authorize it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Prove it. Yes, it is me. It's taking me back to my DevOps organization.
Cool, okay. So here we, essentially this is just a standard ASP.NET web application. There's nothing special here. So we need a pipeline that can restore our NuGet packages and form a build, and that's about it.
Cool, so let's... Cool, then we get this YAML file.
Everyone loves YAML.
Everyone loves YAML, yeah. So we trigger if there is a change on the master branch because we are real developers and we push to master for this example.
Yeah.
We have our solution file, we build it on any CPU, we do our NuGet packages, we build it and we test it. And I think we need to...
We also need to create an artifact with all of these changes in afterwards so that we can run our deployment pipeline. I think it's called publish artifact.
Yes, it is called publish, right? Publish. Publish and build artifact. Cool. We just grab everything that is in the staging directory. Is that exactly? Yeah. It is putting it there. Build package location. It's putting a webapp.zip there. We call it, put it in a drop, and we use Azure pipelines. Perfect. And I hope I didn't click somewhere else. Yes.
That's awesome. So
run it?
Let's run it. Hopefully this works first time. It would be amazing if it does. But it is relatively easy to set up a build pipeline. Thankfully, Umbraco doesn't really require anything too special here.
Yeah, but probably it can get more complicated if you want to add unit testing and other things for if your project gets bigger.
Yeah, so I mean, a standard process would maybe have your unit tests running. It would have a front-end automated build process that might run some kind of node-based build server for your front-end assets. You may do a whole bunch of other stuff. So, you know, it can get complex.
I see Goran Hull in the chat. saying that you can do a build and deploy in one pipeline. Yes,
Ooh.
that is absolutely true. You could just deploy the artifact right away.
Awesome.
That can.
So you would use the release pipelines if you wanted to have the more advanced features like staged releases and release gates. But if you want to just push straight out, it's just when I build, deploy to an environment, then you can do that as part of the build pipeline. That's cool.
Yes.
So Umbraco, the NuGet restore takes quite a bit of time, maybe a couple of minutes. So we may see this build running for up to 5 minutes actually.
I was hoping a little bit faster, but NuGet, NuGet comma. So, but we will need a web app.
Of course, we need somewhere to deploy this to.
Perfect. So let's go to the resource group we've just created, which was called
Umbraco on Twitch.
Umbraco on Twitch?
Umbraco yeah.
Twitch, yes. And we add a web app.
Yes.
Umbraco on Twitch.
So here we have to select the runtime we need to run. Unfortunately, because Umbraco is not .NET Core, we can't select a Docker container, but we can choose ASP.NET 4.7, and we should choose it in the same region as where we've put our database, just so it's nice and performant.
Yes.
In reality, you could run the Umbraco on almost any of the app service tiers. It will be a lot slower if you have less power, but in this case, an S1 would be decent for running a small size production site.
Yeah, but we're just going to run it for like a little while.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to delete it anyway. So let's put it on an S2.
Cool.
At least we don't have to wait. We can enable application insights. We can give again some tags. We review and create it. Resource group is right. Runtime is ASP.NET version 4.7. We're creating a new app service plan. So you can run multiple websites on this app service plan, of course.
Yep.
And we have applications insight enabled. Let's create it. So while this is creating, let's go back to our pipeline.
It worked. Amazing. Maybe the demo gods are on our side today.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Now I've said that. It won't work now I've said that.
Okay, it is done. So we should be able to find the artifact, right? At least.
It's in the published. So it says in the center of that square, you had something that said published.
I'm expecting
There's three columns. So repository and version, time started, related, and it has one published. That's your artifact.
My God, that was. And here it is. It's like 25 MB. That is still pretty decent.
It's got all of those dependencies we showed you earlier in it, so it's going to be a little bit big.
Yeah, and lots of files.
Yeah.
Lots of files. But luckily not in our Git repository.
No, because we excluded that Umbraco folder and the app data folder too. Should we create a deployment pipeline for this? Seeing as we have an artifact and our,
I was
and our
hoping
app
that.
service.
This one is here. Let's see if it is doing anything.
Cool.
Let's go to releases. Create a new pipeline. It is basically just an Azure App Service deployment.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going straight to production. We click it away. Click it, deploy it.
You need to choose your subscription from the
Oh, here, yeah.
Yeah.
Still confuses me where what is. Oh, I probably have to even authenticate it. Authorize. What am I reading in the chat? Would be cool if we could run in a container and put the container on Linux. That would be absolutely amazing if that works.
Yeah, and it's one of the goals, I guess, of this current activity to get Umbraco running on .NET Core, because there's huge value in being able to run it on cheaper Linux servers and run it on kind of anywhere, have your development environment
set up. Is it already like open sourced somewhere that you can try it out?
All of the .NET Core project and activity is available on GitHub. It's happening in a branch called .NET Core/dev in the Umbraco CMS repository. So if you want to get involved and help out, there's up for grabs issues on the GitHub issue tracker to start and work with that as well. So .NET Core/dev is the branch.
Cool. Henk is really quiet. I can't hear him. That is not good. Let me put it louder. Is that better? I also have to learn how to speak more clearly. I hope it is better and you can all hear me now. Let's go back to our pipeline. Yeah, perfect. That is good. I think our sound is a little bit unbalanced. We are here. You have to select any zip. There's basically one zip file.
Yeah.
That's it. Save.
Yeah, I think that's good to go.
Yeah, but probably you have to select an artifact first.
An artifact.
The latest one. Okay. Let's put on continuous delivery.
So that just means it will trigger any time a new artifact becomes available.
And we don't put in any filters or gates at the moment. So let's create a new release. Create.
Ooh, it's gone. So that will.
It is already gone.
That will mean that our pipeline is whirring away and hopefully deploying this to the production site.
They also updated the interface a little bit. Let's click here. Yes, they're still very pleased to us.
Yes. We had to sacrifice a few small animals before we went live. So once this is done, we'll be doing pretty well on our agenda of getting Umbraco installed with the deployment pipeline and up and running on Azure. There are a couple of things, though, that we need to do to configure Umbraco to run in the most performant way and the best way on Azure. And that's just because of a few things that in Azure are slightly different to maybe a standard hosting environment. That is the lack of persistent storage on web apps. So we don't want to have to store all of our media files in our Git repository and deploy them that way. We'd like to be able to reference them from an external source. And also, you'll remember earlier, we had all of those temp files that were created on the Azure app inside the app data folder. That also needs to be put somewhere, maybe more central, just so that it works best with Azure storage. So we're going to need to configure a few app settings just to get that up and running.
Yeah. Cool. So let me give you control through the live share.
Exciting.
And then you can do those settings for me.
Great.
So invitation link has been copied to clipboard. Oh, that is nice. So I will share it in our chat. And then you should be able to do these settings for me.
Yeah, I should. So let me just join live share.
So while you're joining, I'm going to see how our deployment is doing. It actually worked.
Woo!
So let's see in our web app what is happening.
Hopefully we should see exactly what we have locally running on that Azure web app.
Yes, and otherwise let the debugging begin. This is looking good so far.
Definitely looking good so far.
And we can log in here. So I think I used my Microsoft email. I've put a password somewhere. And yes, it was there, but... And then we can start a tour.
Awesome.
Show us around.
Yeah, so we have successfully deployed Umbraco from our local instance, and we're using Umbraco on Azure now already with a continuous deployment pipeline.
Yes. So
Great.
here's one question. Usually when deploying on IIS, I have to set also file and folder permissions. Is there anything that I have to be aware of when deploying as a web app?
As far as I know, there's nothing you need to do specifically to get Umbraco running. It should be ready to go. So especially on Azure, you can do a deployment and that will work. Occasionally on IIS, you do have to set permissions for that folder, so IIS can access it, but Azure doesn't need that.
Yeah, so there's only one thing in like the old days maybe, the app data folder. There are always like file logs and those kind of things, so you might want to ignore that when you're deploying.
Yeah, of course we actually ignored the app data folder from our deployment, so it will overwrite everything except that folder currently, which is great. But also, there's a few settings that we're going to now configure in Visual Studio that help with some of those file locks. Because when you're running on Azure, Umbraco can't obtain a file system level file lock because the file system is distributed effectively. Umbraco has an app setting that we can configure to add a database level lock for anything it needs. So I assume you can see me editing the web config now.
Oh yeah, that is pretty cool.
So I'm adding here the Umbraco main DOM lock app setting. And what this does, if I provide SQL main DOM lock, this just says, please use the database to apply any of those file system locks rather than applying them to the file system. So that's the first thing we needed. And the second thing we need to do is just to say all of those app data, all of those files in app data that maybe could be shared across multiple file systems, we need to store those in a central place on the Azure web app. So here we can say for the local temp storage, please store those in Azure's environment temp directory. So that's the second app setting I've added there. And then the third and final one is those examine indexes. That's the open source Lucene.NET wrapper that Umbraco uses. Those are for search and to make search performant. When running on Azure, you also want to store those temporary files in this shared folder. So to do that, we need to set the Lucene directory factory, and we need to say that that should use this other Lucene directory factory to store it in that environment temp. So that's actually all we needed to do to get Umbraco properly running performant on Azure. I mentioned media though, and to store media files, we don't want to have to commit those. We need to commit those, store those to somewhere else. And for that, we would normally use Azure Blob Storage, which I guess you're familiar with, Henk.
Yeah, I just have to say that it's pretty cool that I just see code appear in front of me. And I sit back and someone else does the work.
It's mind-blowing.
Cool. I think even with code spaces, it is even nicer than this. So, someone is talking about Umbraco 5. That never happened.
No, V5 of .NET,
Yeah.
not
So
Umbraco. Oh,
right.
sorry, .NET version 5, I believe that is. Not
Yes.
Umbraco 5. Umbraco 5 was never a thing.
No, it didn't happen. Will the .NET version matter after version 5 comes out?
I don't have an official answer on that.
Me
It's one
too.
to ask the core team. I know that when they launch Umbraco on .NET Core, it's going to target .NET Core 3.1. So I don't know what the plan is for .NET 5.
No. Not using Azure Search. I think there's a plugin that.
Yeah, you can absolutely swap out. You can swap out any of the examine search providers to be for anything. So you could use an Azure Search provider. There's an Elastic one as well if you wanted to use Elasticsearch, and you can swap examine out for a non-Lucene index. It doesn't matter.
No. So I'm creating a file storage location.
Yep.
A storage account where we can store our images.
Yeah.
Because we don't want them have them destroyed with every deploy. Guess it needs version 1. That will be enough.
Should be, yes.
Will be fine. Probably.
Locally redundant's probably fine as well, but it doesn't really matter.
Let's create it. Perfect.
Now, so Umbraco out of the box it ships with some abstractions that facilitate alternative file systems. In this case, we want to replace the media that Umbraco uploads and save those on this alternative file system, which is Blob storage. There's thankfully a community-owned and created package that lets us do this easily. So this is the Azure Umbraco file system provider. And if we install Azure Umbraco file system provider .media, in this case,
we need to install this one or
yes,
the top one.
So the file system providers .azure is just the stuff needed to store files on Azure, and file system providers Azure Media will store all of our media files on Azure. So it just does all of the configuration needed. It will, if you install the media one, it will install both.
Okay, perfect. I can do that, hopefully.
And just like we did with the other Azure-related config that we needed, this install is going to add a couple of app settings that we need to populate in order for our media to work.
Cool. Let's wait for the package manager to finish. And then we probably have to put some configuration for the blob storage key, right?
Yeah, so you're going to need the host name, and you're also going to need one of the connection strings, the access tokens as well.
Correct. We can do
Great.
that.
That's installed.
Okay.
So you should see in the web config a couple of app settings were added that we need.
Huh. Magic.
So
we need
a few settings for container name, the storage account name, and the connection string. And in this case, the container name is media. We're going to store files in a container called media. And we're going to store them on a service called Umbraco Twitch, which we created. So you can replace the my account name there with Umbraco Twitch, and then the access key we can get from the portal.
And will it create my container automatically, or do I have to create it?
You know, I don't know. We could test it.
Okay.
We can deploy this and see what happens, or run this locally and see what happens. If not, it's relatively easy to go in and create that on Azure.
Yeah. So Umbraco by default uses Lucene.
Yeah, it uses Lucene by default.
And the index is stored in app settings, in app data.
In app data, yes. So they're stored locally on disk, but you can replace with a provider those indexes and put them on an external search service like Azure Search or Elasticsearch.
Okay, it is actually loading again. So now we should be able to upload some images, right?
Yeah, and we should see those appear in blob storage directly as soon as that's done.
So let's open Umbraco. Of course, I didn't store any credentials here. Put in my super secret password. Don't need a tour, so let's create one. Testing images. Of course, I have Simpsons. A whole different story, but let's upload Homer.
Great.
It is actually somewhere.
It's somewhere. Is it on Azure? That's the question. If you right-click and go to the URL,
Open image in new tab.
it will route that internally. That's true. If you go to the Azure portal, you will be able to see if that's on the blob storage.
Okay, let's do that.
You can click blob service and containers. Yeah. Media. So it did create it.
There is something, and Homer is here.
Amazing. So hopefully, when we deploy these configuration changes to Azure, Homer will also be available on our Azure web app.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it is really cool that it rewrites that automatically for me, so I don't expose my blob storage device.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's deploy this change. Of course, we got our pipeline. We pull in some changes. So we have changes to the web.config. We have changes to our packages. We have changes to our project. And another web config. Oh, this is the web config that makes it possible to do the blob storage thing.
To do that routing.
Edit Azure settings and blob storage.
So now we have an index that's going. Oh, sorry, we have a solution that's going to be performant on Azure. It's going to use blob storage, so we don't have to worry about storing files in our database. And all of those indexes are going to get stored in local central storage on Azure. We're not going to have to worry if we were to say do replication, for example.
Cool. We have 7 minutes left.
What do we want to show? I guess we should create a page.
Absolutely, yes. Let's show how easy that can be.
So whilst this is deploying in the background, we will run Umbraco locally, and we can use that same database and the same code base as we're deploying currently to create a very simple page. We've shown how you can upload media, so it would be awesome if we could have a page where you could pick which images you want to show, for example.
Oh, yeah, we can show this the Simpson images, of course.
Yeah. So Umbraco itself, the rendering engine is all running on ASP.NET MVC. So we can use Razor pages to actually render anything that Umbraco has within it. So what we should do is, in the Umbraco back office, we need to create two things. We need to create a document type, which is a page type, effectively. We also need to create a template, and that template is going to be our CSHTML file, our Razor pages file.
Yes. So let me log in. So I think there are two ways to do things. You can do everything from Visual Studio,
yep,
or you can do some things from the interface.
Yeah, you can do things in both places.
So you tell me first I have to create a document type.
You can create a document type, and by default it will also create the template for you. So yes. Homepage will create you a file called homepage CSHTML, and you should see that show up in Visual Studio.
Under views, probably click
Yeah.
here. Yes. Here it is.
Cool. So that's gone and created that. And here you can put whatever code you need in there in order to render it. If we go back to the CMS, we can configure that so that it appears as the home page.
Yes.
We've created the doc type. It doesn't have any properties or anything on it. You also need to say that you're allowed to create it as the root node in the site, the home page. We click Save and go to the content section. We can create a copy of homepage.
Okay, so I just create homepage here. Save and publish.
So you remember before that when we went to the homepage URL, it showed us just that Welcome to Umbraco page, which I think you have open in another tab. Hopefully, if you refresh that, we will see the new blank Hello World page you just created.
Yep. Cool.
Hello
and
World.
It says Hello World.
Okay, cool. I mean, but this
cool,
is a content management system, so we want dynamic content, don't we? We don't want your hard-coded Hello World.
No.
So there's a couple ways we can do this. We need to add a new property. We said media, didn't we? Oh, that's really nice. You just showed off the infinite editing. So when you're on a document, you can go to the properties of that document and actually edit the type directly. Here we want to add a media picker. So we have to add a group, which is like an area to add properties to our document. Homepage, sure. And then add property. Here we can give it a name. Let's call it images.
Images
and choose an editor. Editors are effectively fields that you might have. And it ships with a bunch out the box. There's also open source ones. If you just type and search for media picker.
Yeah, let's do a single one. That is
single media picker.
Yeah.
And click submit. And save.
And also let's add a title.
Sure, yeah.
Just a normal string.
Yep, perfect.
And we can also make them like required or not.
Yeah.
I think, and put in validation for the.
Yes.
Not going to do that now, so save.
And as if by magic, it will actually reload the doc type you were just by magic.
By magic, it will actually crash.
Yeah.
Why?
What's it crashed on? Just try it again. It was going so well.
It was going so well indeed. Yeah, let's just throw them away.
It might be an issue in the infinite editor. Just try refreshing the content item.
Maybe they're just magically there. You never know. No, I don't want it to. Sorry.
You'll have to go directly to the settings and then do it there then.
Test. Okay, let's do a simple one and add a text string.
Sure.
Title. Why am I not allowed to call it title?
So it's not working at all?
It's not working at all. It had to go wrong somewhere, right?
Of course, and only right at the end. I have a theory. If you could go into your app settings and just remove the SQL main DOM lock app setting that I added.
Oh, yeah.
Just comment it out.
This one.
Yeah, and boot it up.
Which one?
It's up on line 34. So it might be that we're running effectively Azure configuration in a local environment. You may need to add that via a config transform.
Oh yeah, probably do those ones in here, right? They're done.
The release config or something.
Yeah. Where did it go? It went here. It booted up also a lot faster. Okay, here's the button. Don't show, please. Open it. And it is here.
Yeah, amazing. So it seems like it was that lock setting.
Yes.
Perhaps a bug, I don't know. But great, we've now got a home page with a field on it called title. Yeah. You can populate whatever you want in that field and save the node, save and publish. And then when we go back to Visual Studio in our CSHTML file, we're using something called Models Builder. And Models Builder here lets us access that property directly. So here you can actually do @model.title.
It was page title.
Or page title, sure.
Yeah.
And save that and run your home page. And with a bit of luck,
I don't have to like do anything anymore.
Let's see. No, of course.
Have to build it with this property.
You may need to build the solution. Could you just check your web config? It's using, which mode is it using? Pure Live. Okay, you may need to restart.
Probably need to build and restart it. Because didn't it put anything here, like in the generated models? Yes. Here it has generated a property for us, so yeah, we will need to reboot.
Still a compilation error?
So I also don't have autocomplete here, which is kind of annoying.
So that's because of the Models Builder mode we're using. Models Builder is this tool that is generating that code for you. And Models Builder,
we have to include this, of course, in the...
Models Builder has several modes, which are one called Pure Live, which is the default, which will automatically generate these this code for you. And then there is app data mode, which lets you compile to C# files classes you can store in your solution.
It would be model.page title, right? But it also can't find the homepage, so that is slightly weird.
It makes sense that it can't find Content Models homepage, I think,
because it is not even included, so it is not generating it. If we don't include this in our project, these files.
Yeah, the models.generated.cs will need to be included.
Yes. Otherwise you can build whatever you want, but it will not compile it.
Correct.
And then it also should be going away here, because it should find it. It should do that. Build, rebuild, again. Can do it.
I mean, the homepage model is definitely there. We can see it's generated the property. Page title with a lowercase t.
Yes, learn how to type, Henk. And learn how to type.
Sense.
I think there's like 50% of the bugs.
Yeah.
At least for me. Then. Okay, we will try it again.
I fixed it for you via live share, so hopefully.
That is so cool. Okay.
Runs and it will work.
We still have a lot of red arrows, but yeah, this will do absolutely nothing, of course.
So that is using our content manage value. And you can test it by going into the CMS and just quickly changing it to something else.
Yes, so now we don't have to be difficult anymore, and we can do Umbraco. Go to our homepage. Hello Twitch, we make it. And bye bye Twitch.
Yeah. And it works.
And it is there. So what we're going to do is we're going to deploy our last changes. So we probably now have to exclude this, that this is going to be checked in. Which is
I think that's fine because it will generate those. You can include that.
Yes, so I have to exclude something in the git ignore file.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So in git ignore, if you just do an exclamation point.
You can't do that from there. Eh? Just type the line in the chat then.
Sure. So you can do app data models.
Oh, yeah.
I think you'll need the capital M because the folder is called models with a capital M.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
And that should exclude that folder. So hopefully you see.
No, it probably needs like the full path then. Of course.
You might be right.
And the full path is okay.
It's just Umbraco Twitch,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it is Umbraco, but that is, I thought I probably have to put it, yeah. Is it picking it up? Nope. Nope. I'm so bad in this ignoring.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't want to have a slash in front, right? Cool.
I think you'll be fine to commit this as it is, and Umbraco will generate those files
These
for
model
it
files Umbraco will generate?
in the environment. That's
Okay.
the point of the pure live setup.
Cool. Then that will be like our final test to see if it is working.
And make sure. So here we've removed the SQL main DOM lock, but we need that on Azure, so don't remove that.
Okay, so I will unstage this file. Cool.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Push. So we'll have an error here now because this building.
Maybe whilst we wait for that to build, we could just answer a couple of points from the chat. So we've got Andy saying, "Oh yeah, something to be aware of. People can create their own interactive tours." So yeah, that tours pop-up that you saw when you open the CMS is fully customizable, and you can do anything you want really to that. Put your own custom stuff for your own setup.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yes, the infinite editing setup is really nice for when you want to go and edit a structure of a document without having to jump to another section, lose what you're doing, come back. You can really nicely flip between them.
So at least Homer is here.
Woohoo! So our media file that we created is there. It has deployed. I guess as well, because we're sharing the same database, that same page title property we created and the content we created will also be there.
We're still cute.
Traffic.
So what we didn't touch is where you can find all this this information. It's called, it's all on our Umbraco documentation.
Yeah, our.umbraco.com has a documentation section, and you can do, well, it's fantastic. It kind of will walk you through everything. I would love to say that we're geniuses, and what we've been telling you today is all stuff that we know off by heart, but of course that's not true. You can visit the Umbraco documentation, and everything we've shown you, including the Azure setup, is all in there.
Exactly. So you can create API controllers. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also saw a question before about hardcore. Hardcore.
Hardcore. So that's their headless software as a service offering, where it's effectively the Umbraco API as a service. Umbraco.com/hardcore, and that will give you, all the information you need. That's our.umbraco.com.
Of course, that is different. Yeah.
So hardcore is content delivered. It's globally distributed, the content, so it's fast. It's got a .NET Core SDK as well as a JavaScript SDK if you want to use it in, say, JavaScript. It is a separate standalone product, so you can't build your own code against it to run in the back office, but you can configure it in exactly the way that we've done today.
Yeah, and then you get an API and you get a client, so you can build
whatever
any framework against it.
Exactly.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So let's see and build. The deploy should be going quite fast. And the build failed, yeah. Of course, I've included those files in my solution, so it is actually looking for it.
Yeah.
So I think you want to change the path for the models. I think you normally want to move them out of your
correct
data folder.
You can do that via an app setting of modelsbuilder.models directory, Umbraco.modelsbuilder models directory, and you can put them in another Visual Studio project even. So you could compile your models as a separate DLL and share it between other projects should you need to.
Yeah. Cool. Then I think we're going to leave it with this.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions about Umbraco, go to the Umbraco website, go to the documentation, look it up. Or Twitter's Callum. Callum's Twitter is on the screen. So tweet him, he will know the answer. And if you want to know something about Azure, then you can always tweet me. So I want to thank you all for watching. And we will be around a little bit in the chat if you want to, if you have some more questions. And I think in 15 minutes, my colleague Brian and Cecile will be on doing some other live coding. So thank you for watching and see you next time.
Thank you.